Yay. Welcome everyone to the November 1 meeting. Members and the public. So, Gary Young, or you guys?
Okay, RASC Halifax Centre respectfully acknowledges that we live and observe on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And the RASC believes in and practices inclusivity and diversity. Halifax Centre welcomes all with an interest in astronomy without prejudice. So the itinerary for today, following the welcome and introductions, Judy's got a few words to say. Then we'll go to the photo montage, followed by our feature presentation by Pat Kelly. And then we'll have a social break with book sale. I'll mention an outreach opportunity, Food for the Soul by Paul Heath, update from the board, and what's up in November. So, Judy.
Okay. I think our members know by now that what we have done is we've shut down our library. It wasn't being used. There were challenges with storage and all sorts of other complicators. So we decided that we would store the books at SCO and then go through them. And we would have had them here a lot earlier, except they went and shut down the woods on us so that we couldn't access SCO for a couple of months. We did go through them. Jerry, Dave Hoskin and I were out there and spent an afternoon. And what you see is the result of that culling. There are some books, there are two tables here. One is a for free table, or if you'd like to donate anything to the center, we would welcome it, but otherwise they are free for the taking. And that's the far table for those of us in the room. And it includes even the, well, we'll take something for the OH if you want to donate, but otherwise they are there. They're older editions, all sorts of really neat books in there. And next, please. The second table, and there are a lot more books on the table than what you actually see here because some of the books were stacked on top of these inside those boxes. But there's really cool books in both tables. There's everything from the Messier Marathon to Star Maps to Mary Lou's book Skyways is there, for instance. It's a really cool book for if you want to get into outreach with kids. It's a really great book. All sorts of other things that are out there from members that have written them, etc. So have a boo. For those of us in the room, you can have a boo at these during the break, and we will stay until 4:30. And then what's left over, we'll pack up and bring back next month, and we'll do the same thing, where there will be at the break until 4:30, and after that, we'll figure out what's left. And my hope is nothing will be left, but that's a big hope. There are two books that I would like to mention that are for sale, and they do have a very specific price, different from the others. And it's, press the button again, dear. And it's Antonin Ruckel's Atlas of the Map. This is a fairly expensive book. I went online shortly after we went through the review, and you can purchase this anywhere from $135 to $315, depends upon where you look. We're asking $75. For those of you that are interested in the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program, this is the reference book that they mention in terms of what map is referenced. So it's a really great reference, even if you don't do the Isabel and you're interested in the moon. Okay, thank you, Jerry. Also, our calendars are in for 2026. You can see there's the cover, and you can see this from the back, the photos that are there from month to month. They're $25 if you pick them up here, all taxes in. For those of you that are away from this meeting and want a copy mailed to you, add an extra $8. So for $33, you can get it mailed to you. All right, so we do have them, and we've already sold some, and our supply is limited. So if you want one, please let us know ASAP. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the photo montage. October was a somewhat better month than September for the astro imagers. But as you see, a lot of focus was on one of the two comets that was visible in the evening sky. Okay, so Jerry Black posted this picture of Messier 27, the Dumbbell Nebula. And he managed to pick up a lot of the surrounding nebulosity, which you don't often see. And the Wizard Nebula, appropriate for Halloween last night. The Pac-Man Nebula from Jerry. And this one I wasn't aware of. It's called it's Sharpless 171, but it's also known as the Teddy Bear Nebula. And I guess that's the teddy bear's head. Looks a little creepy, so maybe it's maybe it's also a Halloween one. For Michael Bullshot, two images of the waxing gibbous moon and the full moon in October. Again, taken through one of Michael's windows. Barry Burgess got this really nice shot of comet C2025A6 Lemon towards the end of October. And this is kind of unique because he didn't actually blend the foreground with the sky. This is a single image. And the lake is glassy. You can even see, I think, the comet reflected in the lake. And the other thing of note are the all the satellite trails, which are a real challenge when you're trying to image something around sunset or dawn. And another one from Barry, the moonrise on October 5th, so the almost full moon. Dave Chapman posted this image of Comet Lemon taken with his smartphone. So you don't need a fancy imaging rig. If you've got an up-to-date smartphone, you can do some astrophotography. Jason Dane's got a couple really nice shots of the comet. This is a wide field. So there's Comet Lemon, and again, a nice crystal clear mirror image of the lake.
And the reflection of the comet.
And the reflections of the comet, yeah. This is probably one of my favorite images of the comet, again from Jason. And you can see the dust tail and the ion tail spreading out from the head of the comet. Jeff Donaldson snapped this shot of the double cluster in Perseus. And while a lot of people concentrated on Comet Lemon, there was another comet in the sky, and it wasn't as spectacular. You had to look a little harder for it. This is Comet C2025 R2 Swan, and it was actually up higher in the sky than Comet Lemon. And Jeff got this really nice shot of it. So you can see the green coma and a very, very short tail. Tim Doucette captured this image of moonrise, full moon, October 6th, with some fall colors underneath. And Tim's shot of Comet Lemon on the 21st of October shows some really nice detail in the ion tail. You can see the kind of the swirling effect due to the solar wind. Lisa Fanning snapped this wide field image of the crescent moon and Venus, apparently she went out to try to get a shot of the comet, but the skies didn't cooperate. But she got this really nice shot instead. Nice vibrant colors of sunrise, or sunset rather. This is my shot of Comet Lemon, taken on a very windy evening with Peter Hurley out at the Swiss Air Memorial. And Pat Kelly got this shot. There's Comet Lemon up in the corner from the Annapolis Valley. And Frank Logan got the head of the comet with some of the tail on October 23rd. Okay, Blair McDonald's got some really nice shots here. This is his most recent image of the Iris Nebula in Cepheus, and he's got all this, really brought out all the dust clouds around this particular reflection nebula. I guess the must have been the moon or the street lights were not being kind, so Blair got this image of an open star cluster, Messier 103 in Cassiopeia. And variable Wolf-Rayet star, WR134 in Cygnus. Also from Blair. Tom McIntyre got these two shots of the waxing and waning gibbous moon, and these are pretty interesting because it's like they're like a mirror image of each other, almost at the same phase of waxing and waning. And the Heart Nebula, again from Tom McIntyre. The Rosette Nebula from Tom. And a nice wide field shot of the Lobster Nebula, along with the Bubble Nebula, the Northern Lagoon Nebula, and Open Star Cluster Messier 52. John McPhee posted this image of the moon and some dark and ominous clouds from the 27th. It's another really great image from Bob Russell, the Shark Nebula in Cepheus. So this is a kind of ominous image of a shark with its open mouth, produced by dust clouds and some nice reflection nebula within it. I believe Bob got this from night at SCO, not maybe 4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah, pretty impressive. Vincent Valley, again, the Lobster and Bubble Nebula. So a little closer in view of these two objects. So there's the Lobster, there's the Bubble, and there's the Northern Lagoon Nebula and Messier 52 Open Star Cluster. Kathy Walker has a few nice ones here. In honor of the recent Halloween, the Ghost Nebula in Cepheus, Sharpless 136. Another Sharpless object, 201 in Cassiopeia from Kathy. And an open star cluster, NGC 6885 in Vulpecula. So there's the open cluster with some really nice colorful stars in the field as well. And another open cluster, NGC 7243 in Lacerta. Lots of nice color in this one too from Kathy. And last but not least, Mary Lou Whitehorn grabbed this shot of the aurora out an airplane window. pretty nice. And I think that's it. So now we have our feature speaker, and Jerry will line that up. So our speaker is Pat Kelly, who's a longtime member of RASC, past president, current honorary president of the chapter, and known for not only his astronomy-related activities, but he's also an avid bird watcher and photographer.
I think he can take over if he wants to share his screen.
Okay, Pat?
Oh, yeah. Yes, and Jason Dane is also very good at photographing both birds and things in the sky, and he beats me hands down. I can't even come close to competing with his images. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Okay, so if I share that, and then pop back here and hit play. There, I think that should do it. Okay. Well, this should be this is going to be, I hope, a lot of fun for everybody. It's always nice to speak to the center, and usually the problem is coming up with a topic. As it turned out, about a year ago, I was in Scotland for the better part of a month, and I taught before I retired. I taught a course in archaeoastronomy, which is sort of the science of architecture as it relates to structures that were built to do with the sky. So Stonehenge is the one that comes to mind. In fact, we're going to pop into Stonehenge for just a bit as part of this. But there's lots of places around the world, and a lot of very old structures are found in the British Isles and in Scotland. And then from there, things went up to doing sundials, and I came across a few interesting sundials along the way as well while I was there. I thought I'd start with a little bit of humor, because one of the big questions when it comes to measuring time is exactly what is time. And there's lots of discussion on exactly what it is. I've got two. The first one is from Philomena Kunk, who's a British comedian / journalist. So let's hear what she has to say about time.
Because of the shape of clocks, you might think that time goes in a circle, but it actually goes in a line. This is the famous Greenwich Meridian line, named after the band Marillion, who were named after this line. Every day that's ever happened starts exactly here, coming out of that time transmitter and running along this metal line on the ground. That's why this is the only place in the world where I can be in the past and the future, with the present running right up through my middle bits.
So that's one take on time, that it's sort of linear. She also points out further on in the episode on time that the first clocks were developed in ancient Mesopotamia, but they didn't know it was ancient Mesopotamian times because they hadn't yet invented clocks. The next one is from somebody who should know a little bit more about explaining time. That's a Time Lord. This, in fact, is the 10th Doctor. And given that it's Halloween, it's also interesting that this is from an episode called Blink, which introduces a totally scary new type of monster called the Weeping Angels.
Quite possibly.
1969, that's where you're talking from.
Afraid so.
But you're replying to me. You can't know exactly what I'm going to say 40 years before I say it.
38?
Get this down. I'm writing in your bits.
Possible, tell me.
Not so fast.
Yeah, people don't understand time. It's not what you think it is.
Then what is it?
Complicated.
Tell me.
Very complicated.
I'm clever and I'm listening, and don't patronise me because people have died and I'm not happy. Tell me.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah.
So a totally different take on time. And while we may not exactly know what time is, we have had no trouble actually trying to measure time and how it progresses through the seasons, through the days, and through the hours. And in ancient times, a lot of structures were built in the British Isles. Odd as this may sound, but 5,000 years ago, the civilizations in the British Isles were had some of the best, highest standards of living and most sophisticated engineering on the planet. And they built a large number of structures, some of which we still have no idea exactly what the purpose is or what they're for. Some of them we do. Stonehenge, as you can see down here, assuming you can see the cursor, Stonehenge is probably the best known example. We're also going to pop over to Ireland for one called Newgrange. A grange is sort of a country estate with houses. The Newgrange is a little bit of a misnomer because it was a new grange 1,000 years ago, but the name's stuck ever since. And there's also some up here in the northern parts of Scotland that I was actually able to get in and take a look at. In terms of their ages, as you can see, the Scottish ones are in blue. The Irish one is in green. The English one is in red. And because everybody always wants to compare things with the Great Pyramid, I put the Great Pyramid in sort of a sandstone color. But the oldest site is actually not an astronomical site. It's an actual village called Skara Brae. And it was occupied from about 3180 BC to about 2500 BC. So it was in use for a very long period of time. And all of these sites, Skara Brae, the Stones of Stennis, Maeshowe, and the Ring of Brodgar are all in one very small part of Scotland. So Skara Brae was occupied when some of these structures were built, and you can we'll see just the type of technology that they actually had. As I said, Newgrange is over in Ireland. It dates to 3100 BC, and Maeshowe in Scotland, it dates to almost the same time, and they're very similar structures, as we will actually see. Let's take a look at where we're going to start off. We're going to start off in Orkney. One thing you discover when you go to Scotland is they don't call it the Orkneys or the Orkney Islands. It's just Orkney, the same way that they call this group of islands up to the north of it just Shetland. Some of you may be familiar with the Shetland TV series. I just think that Shetland has better publicity than the Orkneys, but the Orkneys are a very fascinating place to visit. They're not at all, as you sort of go up through northern Scotland, where it's all sort of mountainous and moors, you sort of figure that's going to continue on when you get into Orkney. But Orkney is more like a Annapolis Valley in places. So this is a map of Orkney, and you'll notice that it says mainland Orkney. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek because in both Shetland and in Orkney, the largest central island is called mainland. So when they're talking about mainland Orkney, they're actually talking about things that are actually on the island of mainland. And the things that we're going to be taking a look at, numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 on this list, as you can see, are very close together in this area of mainland right here. So the first place we're going to take a look at is Skara Brae. This is the settlement. It's actually kind of funny because when you go from the interpreter center and actually walk down to the shoreline where it's located, proportionally along the way, they have markers that tell you as you're going back in time what other things are being built. So this is the marker for the Parthenon. And then you walk past that one, you eventually find the marker for Stonehenge. And then you eventually find the one for the Great Pyramids. And then you find the one that actually says you're now at 3100 BC and you're now when Skara Brae was first being built. And although it's a bit older than the pyramids, it's not quite as impressive as the pyramids. This is what the community actually looks like. And in fact, it was only discovered in 1850. And when I say discovered, it was completely buried in sand. And there was a massive storm that year that basically swept away all of the beach in front of it and all the overlying sand. And they found the remnants of this very old settlement underneath it. And you can see there's some visitors walking around and looking down into the actual houses. So the houses were actually built underground, and they had openings in the top. I'll show you one here looking the other direction. These would have had some wooden sticks with hides going over the tops of them. but you can see that you sort of went down through a central area, and then all these structures in here were connected by underground passageways. And despite the fact this is 5,000 years old, you can see that this is a recreation of one of them. You used to be able to go into, I think it's called room number 5, but they were worried about it being exposed to the weather, so they basically covered that one over again. It was the best preserved one, and they built an exact replica of it up at the Interpretation Center. So you can see that all the furniture is made out of stone, the walls are made out of stone. They were making pottery at the time. And the civilization there continued on for a very long time in that one area. Now nearby are the stones of Stennis, and the stones of Stennis do not appear, from anything that they've been able to learn, have anything to do with timekeeping, but it is this sort of the idea of taking these large stones and placing them upright in a circle. And it's thought that these may have been more of a ceremonial place than a timekeeping observatory. The tallest one in there is actually quite big. It's about 5 meters tall. There were originally about 12 of them. Some of them have been lost over time. And they're thought to be the oldest standing stones in the British Isles. They were originally surrounded by a henge, as in Stonehenge. A henge is basically a ditch where the soil excavated from the ditch is dumped on the exterior of the actual circle as you make it. And that was discovered by excavating through the outlying lands, going out away from it. And as you can see, the sheep are very adept at keeping the grass cut in the area around the actual monument itself. And that gives you an idea of just how large these stones are, and that they're clearly have seen a fair bit of erosion, given that they've been there for thousands and thousands of years. And just to give you an idea of sort of the area around that, as you can see, if I showed you this picture and told you it was taken in the Annapolis Valley, you probably wouldn't have any. You probably would think I was actually telling the truth. It's a remarkably fertile land, which is one of the reasons why there's such a high civilization here, between the ability to actually farm and the fact that you were surrounded by very shallow seas, which meant fishing was also very easy to do. And this sort of gives you just a bit of an idea. That's definitely not what you would see in the Annapolis Valley, but this is sort of to give you a bit of the landscape. This is sort of looking along the water over towards past more sheep. There's sheep everywhere in Scotland, over towards the actual stones. And we're going to temporarily just pop over to Newgrange in Ireland. Newgrange is just north of Dublin. It's on the Boyne River, and its name now, it's usually on most signs there as Brúna Boyne. It means Palace of the Boyne, and it's a very grand structure. So this is what you see from the other side of the river. There's a river down there in the foreground, the Boyne River, actually. Probably most famous for the Battle of the Boyne in the 1600s, I think it was. But this is what Newgrange looks like now. It's been restored. Originally, when it was first discovered back in the early 1900s, I think it was it just looked like a big drumlin. It was basically just a big hill, sort of like George's Island. It's just basically a big leftover glacial drumlin. And in fact, when they were actually looking to build a new highway nearby, they started digging into it, thinking they could get all sorts of gravel from it, and discovered that, in fact, it wasn't just a big pile of gravel and a drumlin. It was actually a man-made structure. This is what it looks like up close. It's got a bunch of curbstones that run around the bottom of it. This is mostly quartz that was brought a considerable distance, because there's no quartz native to that particular part of Ireland. It's been brought from a long time. And they've been able to reconstruct it because once the soil had gradually slumped down, you can then sort of use a computer model to figure out to sort of unslump it and put it back to what it looked like. The white facing is only on the side of the structure facing down towards the actual river. So on the back, it was just regular stones. One thing that is new, this concrete that's been added here, this This is not prehistoric concrete. This is concrete to protect some of the markings on the stones from erosion and rainwater, that sort of thing. This is the entrance, and this large stone in the front is actually what they hit when they were digging into this hill looking for gravel. And in fact, this symbol over here, these three spirals that are connected, are now the actual symbol for the National Sites organization for Ireland, the same way we have the beaver for Parks Canada. That's the symbol they use for their entire park system. And in particular, it's got an opening here that goes inside. At some point after it was built, long after it was built, this stone was actually slid across, put in place, and left there. And there's also this thing up here called the roof, a roof window. And what's interesting about this structure is if you go in through the entrance, there's actually several chambers in there. So this is a plan view of it. Note that north is at the top. And notice that it's lined up facing towards the southeast. This is what it looks like from the side. So most of this mound is just a big mound of dirt. They have sort of excavated into it, and there's nothing else in here. It's just soil. This is the actual chamber inside. And this is a better drawing of it. It uses what's called a corbelled roof. So it's basically flat slabs of stone that are basically held in place by the weight of the soil above them. So there's no mortar holding any of this together. And it's been sitting there for 5,000 years without apparently any issues, no rainwater penetration either. They designed it so that the water sort of slopes down and runs off to the sides to keep it dry. But what's interesting about it is that for a couple of days around the winter solstice, at sunrise, the light from the rising sun passes down through the main chamber, but it also goes through this skylight, and it strikes the ground right at the very back of the actual chamber. So clearly this was used to mark the solstice. And in ancient times, especially if you lived in northern climes where winters could be rather harsh, the solstice marked the point on the horizon where the sun would keep rising further and further and further towards the south. And then it would actually stop and turn and go back the other way. And in fact, the word solstice actually means turning. The sol meaning sun and sis mean to turn. It's when the sun actually slows down and goes back. And you can actually, this is what it looks like on the inside. So you can see the light coming in here through this roof box. They put this iron bar across there, by the way, because they found that teenagers were getting in there at nighttime. So they decided to block it off so that you actually can't get a human through there anymore. But the light actually makes its way all the way through. And if you go there and you go to the visitor center, you can actually put your name in for a draw, because for the 5 days around the solstice, you can be one of the lucky 25 people that gets to go inside there at sunrise and watch this actually happen. Assuming it's clear, of course, and in Ireland, that's not always going to be the case. They get something like 10,000 requests every year, at least when I was there back in 2007. I had no idea that if I was suddenly called up and said, can you be in Ireland in a month's time because your name has been chosen? I said, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to do this because I'm working. So what I did instead was I filled it up with Roy's name and address. And since Roy never got a call, I assumed that he didn't get picked that year. But I'm pretty sure that if Roy had been called, he would have been over there in Ireland to see this. So there's something similar to this in Orkney. It's a place called Maeshowe. And as you can see, it's a much smaller structure. It has a henge around it, as many sites do. One of the things that unfortunately was we were not able to get in when we were there because A, we didn't know that you actually had to buy tickets for it at least 3 weeks in advance. And B, even if you could get inside, you're not allowed to take pictures inside, which is kind of funny given that it's all stone. It'd be different if it was like dark and there was paintings in there where the flash might cause a problem. So I found some pictures on the actual website for the actual location. This is the entranceway. As you can see, it's a lot less grand than the one over in Ireland. And this is what it looks like on the inside. At least this is what it looked like on the inside in 2012, which is when this picture was taken. This is actually on the Irish history site's website, so you can give an idea of what it looks like. And what's interesting about this is, again, you can see it's stone construction. So it's all done with stone. If you look at a plan of it, so here's a drawing that sort of shows the entranceway. There's a little cell with an opening that goes into it lined up with the main tunnel. And here's the passageway. So here's the central chamber. You can see that unlike in Newgrange, where most of the mound is dirt, most of the mound in this location is actually just covering the central chamber. And if you look at the arrow here, you'll see that this is north. Notice that this one is not lined up towards the southeast as it was in Newgrange. It's lined up towards the southwest. So this one does the same thing on the winter solstice, but it's the setting sun that does it. And they're a bit puzzled as to why they chose southwest, and England, or in Ireland, they chose the southeast. It may just be that there wasn't enough communication, or it may just be that the weather there was typically better in the evening, so you'd have a better chance of catching it. And again, this is a picture that was taken by the Park Service on the evening of the solstice. You can see the sun shining, making its way all the way down through that passageway. The Ring of Brodgar is also in this same area. And this is a little map that shows the sort of landscape around there. So this is May Show that we were just looking at. These are the stones of Stennis. And over here is the Ring of Brodgar. So you can see they're all in a very close to each other. And Scar of Grey is just off towards the coastline, off the top of this. One of the things you always have to watch when you're looking at maps of Scotland is when you see something that's labeled as a loch, that does not tell you at all whether it's freshwater or saltwater, because where the coastline of Scotland is a lot like Norway, it has some very deep, what we would call a fjords going in. They call them lochs, whether they're connected to the ocean or whether they're completely landlocked and they're all freshwater. So you have to keep that in mind. I'm pretty sure this is ocean out here, and this is there's a little causeway that you go across here. This may have been a lake, or it may have been closed off by the causeway. But this is the what it looks like. Again, it's got a henge around it. You can see that there's the ditch with the stuff thrown out on the side. The center of this one has not actually been excavated to see whether there's actually any remnants of any central structures in it. There's 27 stones left. They have excavated around the outside, and there's about 60 places where it's clear that there were holes that have been filled back in again. And it may just be that the stones were taken for other purposes. It's about 105 meters across. Now, 105 meters is kind of hard to visualize. I used to use Fenwick Towers because Fenwick Towers is 100 meters tall, but Fenwick Towers is sort of sitting in a hollow, so you can't really see it. So for those of you in Halifax, this new apartment building, which has just gone up on Quinpool Road down by the Arndale Roundabout, is now the tallest building in Halifax at about 105 meters. So take that building and lay it down sideways, and that gives you an idea of how big that circle of stones is. It doesn't look that big when you're looking at it in the pictures because it's basically rocks in a very flat area, and so there's nothing really there to give you any scale for it. Now, these pictures were taken when you could actually walk around here, which is why the grass is tromped down. But again, for conservation purposes, they don't let you inside anymore. This is also taken when you could walk around. So you see it's all tramped down here. And this pinkish colored plant growing in here is heather. And one of the interesting things about heather is it's a flowering plant. But unlike a lot of plants like blueberries or plants we have here in Nova Scotia where they flower in the spring, or they flower in the summer, or they flower in the late summer, heather just flowers randomly throughout the year. So whenever you find a patch of heather, there's always some of it in bloom, which makes it quite pretty. This is what it's like now. So there's a gate across the one sort of causeway that goes across the ditch into the center. You can see there's still a little bit, the grass is coming back, And this is all heather along here. So you sort of have to walk around the outside of it now. And this sort of, again, gives you just a feel for the landscape around there. And there's some people standing at the very end off to the right that sort of gives you a bit of an idea of just how big this structure actually is. Well, before we leave Orkney, there's one other place we're going to stop in, and that's back in Kirkwell, which is the main town. And the reason we're going to Kirkwell is because that's where you'll find the Orkney Brewery. And inside the Orkney Brewery, they brew quite a few different types of beer, including Dark Island, which has the Stones of Stennis on the label. They have an amber ale called Puffin. Since I'm into bird watching, I thought that was kind of interesting as well. And they also have one called Northern Light. Because Scotland is so far north, the Northern Lights there are actually relatively common. In fact, we were staying at one place down near the southern part of Scotland, and somebody read a post from somebody else, a friend of theirs on Facebook, that there was actually Northern Lights that night, and they turned off the lights behind the pub. We went outside, and it wasn't really convincing until you actually took a picture with the camera, and if you did like a 5-second exposure, you could see the green in it quite nicely. So they do get those quite a lot, and they also make really good beer there. The last of these sort of Neolithic sites is on the island of Lewis and Harris. Lewis and Harris is a very weird place because there's the Isle of Lewis and the Isle of Harris, but it's one island. It's not two islands. I'd always assumed it was two islands, but in fact, the Lewis, which is this upper part, is very flat and boggy, and Harris down here is extremely mountainous. So they gave them the names of two. They could name them two different things, and they refer to each of them as an island. Although, like I said, they're geographically just one island. And this site is Callanish, and Callanish is probably the most impressive in terms of the number of stones that are there. It's got a central monolith that's almost 5 meters tall, and it's surrounded by a circle, and there's also 3 spokes of stones that radiate out in the east, west, and northerly direction. This is a view of it from another angle. So you can see it's got this one very, very tall stone in the center. Now, this one was definitely used for timekeeping. This is a view of it as you're sort of walking up the road towards it. So it's just sitting in a field. You can see it's a lot more compact than the others. And the reason why this one is of interest is because of the fact it does the same thing that Stonehenge does. Now, the Stonehenge date that I showed earlier is the date of Stonehenge 1. Stonehenge was built in 3 different stages. This is the 3rd and final stage of Stonehenge, when all these large rocks were brought in. And that's what, when most people think of Stonehenge, this is what they think of. But there are rocks that were placed there much earlier than these, in fact, thousands of years earlier than these ones. And if you look for alignments between the rocks and the site at Stonehenge, what you discover is there are a lot of alignments that point towards spots on the horizon where the sun rises on the equinox and sun sets on the equinox. The sun rises in the northeast in the middle of the summer. It rises in the southeast. So this is the winter solstice in the middle of the winter. And similarly, there's ones over here. This is where it sets in the middle of the summer, and this is where it sets in the middle of the winter. But more importantly, they also track the motions of the moon. Now, the moon's orbit is tipped by about 5 degrees relative to the ecliptic plane, which means that if you look at it on a star chart with lines of declination, your standard grid of right ascension declination, the moon can appear up to 5 degrees above the sun or 5 degrees below the sun, and it goes back and forth in an 18.6-year cycle from one side above the moon or above the sun to being below the sun and back up again. And as a result, on the first day of spring, the moon will rise to the north of the sun, go back to here, reach another extreme when it rises as far to the south of the sun as it can, and goes back again. And these are tracked at Stonehenge for all of these 6 times of the year. So they not only track the sun, they also track what the moon was doing. Now, if you do the same thing for Callanish, you find you get the exact same diagram. So they were tracking the exact same things that they were tracking in Stonehenge. The reason why they're spread out a little bit more than they were in the previous one, if you just back up for a second, you can see that the angles between this line, for example, and this line, it's bigger here, and that's because you're looking. It's located much further north than Stonehenge is. And the further north you go, that 5 degrees, when you bring it out at an angle to the horizon, gets spread out further and further and further, the further north you go. Okay, the next one is going to be a combination of a telescope and a sundial. In fact, I discovered the observatory at this location before I actually discovered the sundial. And this is at Stirling. Stirling is probably most famous because Stirling Castle, which is where the kings of Scotland reigned from up until there were no more kings of Scotland, mainly because James VI of Scotland became James I of England and moved to London, which left a bunch of castles in Stirling that no longer had use. But it's a big tourist draw. They get lots of people there, and they've got a lot of artifacts and stuff. So in Stirling itself, we were staying at the Stirling Highland Hotel. More by chance, we discovered it had an observatory up on the roof of it. And it's within walking distance of most of the things you'd want to see in the main town of Stirling, not the castle, though. But an interesting hotel. It was originally a boys' school, and then it was a co-ed school, and then a new wing was built on it. And the observatory was put on with a donation from a fellow I'll talk about in just a bit. When you drive around it, it's got a courtyard. This is where you go into reception. And I was in and out of this door probably 4 or 5 times before I noticed that this square up over the door is in fact a sundial. So this is a vertical sundial. So unlike the usual ones you tend to find where they're horizontal, in the case of a vertical sundial, this line still points at the North Celestial Pole, but because this is pointing down, the North Celestial Pole is up in that direction, and it still casts a shadow. So you can see there's some numbers around here. There's 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the same thing in Roman numerals, for those who want to do it in Roman numerals around the sides. If you zoom in, you can see there's a little note carved into it that says it was presented in 1891. So it's over 100 years old. What I found was really interesting about this sundial, though, was along the bottom. So this is the 11 hours, 12 hours. You'll notice that down here, they have it in Roman numerals as well. And they've got every single minute ticked off all the way along here and numbered. So this is Greenwich apparent time. And they even have a correction for the equation of time. So here's the months of the year. During this time up to here, you add it to the sundial to get the apparent time. And in here, they've got little numbers. 14 seconds, 12, 10, 6, 6, 4, 2, 0. And now you go over to 2 minutes, and now you start subtracting from apparent time to get your Greenwich time and so on. The part that amazed me was I didn't even notice these until I zoomed in all the way with my camera. And I think if you're actually there in the courtyard of the building trying to read the sundial and trying to either read the minutes on this scale or trying to read these things here, you'd have to be looking at it with a pair of binoculars, because there's no way you're going to see that with your eyes. The other thing to notice about this sundial, if I just back up a second, is you see that it's not actually telling the time, because the one thing I tended to find was every time I found a sundial in Scotland, it was overcast. Not raining, but just for a place that has as many sundials as it does, they don't seem to be usable a lot, just because of the climate that they have there. So this is what you sort of see as you sort of go across. So they got the entire year of corrections to match the sundial up with what your watch would say. And they built an addition on the school. This was put on in 1888. the entire doorway was moved from what used to be the Scottish building where the Scottish Mint had been, and they added all of these zodiac constellations, carvings to the sides of it. So that was kind of different. And they have an observatory on the roof. Now the observatory was, you could go up and visit it if the one person who actually had the key was actually working that day. And as it turned out, they weren't working the day that I was, the day that we were actually there. And so I got this picture from their website. It's a 12.5-inch Newtonian telescope. It's still in good use. This is also from their website. And I thought, well, since I couldn't get any pictures, I'll go to the website and I'll get some. The part that surprised me was it says in here, tours are hosted by the Royal Astrological Society for hotel guests as well as local groups. So I emailed them last night to ask them if they actually meant Astronomical Society. I haven't heard back from them yet. But there is an Astronomical Society. There is a branch of the Royal Astronomical Society that mentions that they do tours up there in Stirling. So I think whoever did that up, didn't know the difference between the two of them. Now this is the guy who actually donated the money. He was the local MP at the time. His name was Sir Henry Campbell Bannerman. He donated the money to have the observatory built in the late 1800s. And he went on to become the British Prime Minister in 1905. And he has one claim to fame that no other British Prime Minister actually has. This is Larry. This is Larry the cat. He has his own Twitter feed, if memory serves me correctly. Here he is waiting to be let into his house at 10 Downing Street. His official title is Chief Moser to the Cabinet. And he's been around a long time. He's a very old cat. And there's been a long list of prime ministers who've actually had their careers die at 10 Downing Street. From Gordon Brown to David Cameron, to Theresa May, to Boris Johnson, to Liz Truss, who has the record for the shortest term ever as British Prime Minister. In fact, when she became Prime Minister, one of the big jokes in the UK was that she'd be lucky if she lasted longer than a head of lettuce. And it turned out the head of lettuce actually had a longer useful term than she did as Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak and possibly Keir Starmer, although Larry is getting up there in age. But the one thing that Campbell Bannerman did was he literally died at 10 Downing Street. He was last Prime Minister to actually die at 10 Downing Street. He actually resigned as Prime Minister a couple of days before he actually died. So while these ones may have had careers that died, he actually literally died when he was there. Another place with sundials is Inverness. Inverness is the town at the northern end of the Great Glen, as it's called. If you ever look at a topographical map of Scotland, there's this giant gash from very old times that goes up right through it. And probably one of the most famous landforms in Scotland can be found right along it, and that is Loch Ness. Loch Ness is the lake. It's not connected to the ocean, but it's called a loch. Fills up most of this Great Glen, and Inverness is the big town at the top of it. And there's actually a canal called the Caledonia Canal that was actually built to allow ships to come up here and sail down Loch Ness and take the shortcut rather than having to go all the way around up through here to get from one side of Scotland to the other. So Inverness, this is one of the town squares in the downtown part. And I saw this rather interesting looking monument over there you can see on the left-hand side. It's got some birds attached to it, and that's a unicorn standing at the top of it. Unfortunately, the lighting, as you see, it was overcast again. The lighting was very good, but you see statues of unicorns everywhere in Scotland because it is sort of their national animal. Most places tended to use real animals, like England has a lion as their national animal. But the rest of the British Isles just said, well, no, Wales went with a dragon, and Scotland said, well, if you're going to take a dragon, we're going to take a unicorn. So the unicorn is their national animal. On the base of it, there's apparently a legend of the unicorn and falcon. So there's falcons are the two birds that are there. But it was only when I got over a little bit closer to it that I realized that there's 4 round things down here in the base. And those are 4 different sundials. Different in the sense that they're all the same design, but there's one on each of the 4 sides of it. And on the main one, you notice that this is the gnomon to cast the shadow. Up here at the top, it's British Standard Time, is what the BST stands for. You can see there's even a little graphical depiction of the equation of time, so you can correct the sundial's time. And it even tells you they've got the signs of the zodiac along here, which corresponds to where the tip of the shadow is. So you can even tell what time of the year it is by where the tip of the shadow ends. As you can see, there's no shadow because it was cloudy. But because each of these faces in a different direction, these are sort of spherical bowl-shaped depressions into the statue. This is one on the other side. So you can see that if I back up for a second, see these ones slope from the lower left towards the upper right. These ones slope from the upper left to the lower right. This one's only on this one side, because presumably this part over here is in the shade all the time. And similarly on the other side, this one only has a scale on one side, presumably because the sun never casts a shadow in this one because of the orientation of the design for it. Now there's 2 more places we're going to pop into, but first we have to. I'm going to talk just a little bit about British place names and how you pronounce them or mispronounce them. And those of us who are in Nova Scotia have probably heard more than their fair share of tourists that can't pronounce Musquodoboit or Antigonish or any of the place names we have around here. And in the UK, it's even worse because they've got a lot of place names that come from very old languages and the pronunciations are not what you would expect them to be. So I've got a little list of them here. So go down the list and see if you can figure how you would expect that to be actually pronounced. So those are 7 different towns or communities in Britain, and we'll start with the top one. The top one is actually officially, according to a survey, it's the most mispronounced place name in Britain. It's pronounced Froome. So it's got a double O sound in the middle of it. The next one down is Ramsham. The next one is Mosul. The next one is Toaster, Gotham, Alec, or Anik, I should say. And my all-time favorite, Bewley. So as you can see, letters aren't pronounced the way you'd expect them, and they often just drop letters out of words at random, don't even pronounce them. So that brings us to the next stop, Colleen Castle. There's a Z in there. It's not pronounced. I don't know why, but that's been the case. And Colleen Castle is in the southwest part of Scotland. It's on the coastline. And the term castle is a bit of a misnomer. It's actually an estate, and it's more of a country house. You'll see why when we take an actual look at the building. So this is on the way walking in. It's actually an estate with about 260 hectares, and it was built as a sort of bachelor pad by David Kennedy, who was the 10th Earl of Cassilis in 1777. So they started work on it in 1777, and it was finished in 1792. So it took them basically about 15 years from start to finish. They probably built it in less time than, yeah, I think that would probably beat out the Eglinton light rail system in Toronto they've been waiting for ages and ages. And as you can see, it's a nice little pile of stone. But I don't think anyone in their right mind would consider this to be a castle. By the time it was built, Britain was a nice, safe place. If you did anything in the way of putting up walls that had crenellations on the top of them, it was purely for decorative. It wasn't for defensive purposes. But it does have a sundial out there, just a regular everyday sundial. But what was interesting about this one is the angle at which you have the gnomon come up from the horizontal plate depends on your latitude, because this line coming up along here has to point to the North Celestial Pole. So here in Halifax, where we're at latitude of 45 degrees north, typically when you see sundials around here, this comes up at about a 45-degree angle. This is much steeper, and the reason for that is that Scotland is a lot farther north than we are. So in fact, Culzean Castle is located about here, which if you slide across means it would be in this part of Labrador if it was over here. And most people don't realize just how far north Ireland and the British Isles in general are. People tend to think that if you want to get to Britain, you just fly east of Nova Scotia and you'll get there. It's like, no, if you fly east of Nova Scotia, you hit the French-Spanish border is what you hit. Ireland and the UK are much further north than that, but they have a much milder climate because of the Gulf Stream compared to, say, Labrador. The last place we're going to go to is also going to need a little bit of setup, and that's to do with Shakespeare and how history actually worked compared to how Shakespeare actually thought history worked. And we're also going to find another one of these place names that is not pronounced the way you'd expect it to be pronounced. When I was in grade 10, this was a long time ago, grade 10, everybody in grade 10, year after year after year, did Macbeth, the play by Shakespeare. And this is the dialogue where he first meets the witches, and the witch, the Thane is a title like mayor or sheriff. It was basically meant you were in charge of a place. And the first witch says, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis." That's how my English teacher pronounced it. That's how everybody I know over here has ever pronounced it, and it's totally wrong. That's not how it's pronounced in Scotland. For all I know, Thane of Cawdor, it may be Cawdor, it may be Cador, it may be Cador, who knows? Unless you actually go there and ask somebody from that place. But this is from the play, Macbeth, when they foresaw that he'd become the Thane of what it turns out is not Glamis, it's Glams. The I is in there, you don't pronounce it. And this is what actually happened in Scottish history. In the year 1040, King Duncan I was killed in a battle by Macbeth. He wasn't assassinated in a castle. He was actually killed during a battle between two rival claimants for the throne. 1040, Macbeth becomes king. 17 years later, Macbeth dies in a battle. Again, he wasn't fought, die in a battle with Macduff inside a castle. He died in battle. 1400, Glamis Castle was started, so the castle wasn't even there when Macbeth was around. And 200 years later, Shakespeare actually writes the play Macbeth. Now, you would think, given the time differences, that Glamis Castle would not be all that popular, but because it's mentioned in Shakespeare, the castle at Glamis and the castle at Cawdor, assuming that's how it's pronounced, get a lot of tourists just because of the fact that they're mentioned in Macbeth. And this is where you'll find Glamis Castle. It's north of Edinburgh. And as you can see, it's a castle not in the true sense of the word. And it was built in the French chateau style. And there was a lot of cross influence between France and Scotland throughout most of history, which at first glance you think, well, that doesn't really make sense because the French were Catholic and the Scots were Protestant. But the one thing that the Scots and the French both had in common was neither one of them got along with the English for most of history. So it was one of those cases of your enemy's enemy is your friend. So there was a lot of influence back and forth between Scotland and France, and the French chateau style of construction made it when Glamis was actually being built. So while waiting around outside for the guided tour on the inside, I noticed this weird looking sculpture thing off in the middle of the lawn, and there's a round building there. I have no idea what the little round structure is for. But I thought, well, that's kind of a weird looking thing. I might as well go over and just take a closer look at it. And the closer you get to it, the weirder it looks. And when you get up close to it, what you discover is the 4 lions are each holding up a sundial. So this is a vertical sundial, and so this is one of the lions, and you can see it's got a sundial. This again is going to point to the North Celestial Pole, which is why it's at such a steep angle. But because you're facing in different directions, this is the shape of the gnomon over here on this sundial. I was thinking, well, like, that's kind of neat. What's that weird thing up on the top? So you've got 4 lions going all the way around the sides. So you've got 4 sundials. There's 80 sundials up on the top of it. And I know there's 80 because when I actually went inside, there was a big reference book to what was there at the castle. And they actually gave a credit to the mathematician who designed this structure and got all these little gnomons in the right place at the right time. And you might be able to see there's actually numbers along the edges of most of these little triangular things. So I've never ever seen a sundial before that has 84 sundials in one structure. That's just absolutely amazing. And if it wasn't the fact it was such a weird shape, I probably wouldn't have even walked over to see what it was. So that's a quick tour of the Neolithic sites in Scotland, and then on to a few places that have interesting sundials. If you ever get over there yourself, you should definitely take a look at them and just poke around, because there are things over there in a lot of places where there's just sundials that don't even make it into the tourist literature because there's so many of them. It's sort of like Ireland. When I was in Ireland, there was this one small community that actually had 4 castles in one place. One was a ruin. One was still being lived in. One was, they did a medieval dinner feast thing there in the evenings. And I can't remember what the 4th one was used for. But it's not uncommon in Ireland to drive by the ruins of a castle that's completely grown over with ivy and there's no sign on it, just because they have so much stuff. I mean, I was at one site in Ireland that's noted for having round towers and Celtic crosses, and there was a stone structure about the size of a very small house, just the stone walls with gable end and a door on it, and there was actually a sign on the inside that said that it was of no historical significance, as it only dated to the 16th century, because everything else at that site was at least 400 years older. So Scotland is sort of like that. When you start poking around, you find all sorts of interesting sundials. And as was in the little description of the talk, we don't have very many here in the Maritimes, because by the time Europeans made it over here and started building things, sundials on buildings sort of had gone out of fashion, because by then people tended to use either mechanical clocks or they tended to have their own pocket watches. The only place I've come across an actual vertical sundial, like an old-fashioned one, not one that was sort of put in as a commemorative thing, was in Fredericton. There's a part of the historical part of Fredericton. There is a building that was used as barracks by the English troops that were stationed there back in the 1700s. And on one end of it, there's a vertical sundial. But I think it's the only one I'm aware of that I've ever come across while traveling around the Maritimes. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them. I'm going to stop sharing here.
That's okay. I can repeat it for you, Michelle.
Okay.
Yeah.
The thing you had, that was excellent. Just a comment. I've only just come back from a month in Ireland, and one of the highlights of my trip was a day in Boyne Valley, spending time appreciating Mouth and Newgrange, and it's really quite a magical experience to be there. And what I would offer is, and your presentation just demonstrates it beautifully with all the other sites. We think we are so very sophisticated today with our tools and technology, but in fact, thousands upon thousands of years ago, there was really an incredibly sophisticated understanding of how to measure movements in the sky and how to understand what was actually happening in the world around us, and they're beautifully presented at these sites. thanks for sharing it so nicely.
Were you able to get that, Pat?
Yes. Well, I think part of the reason they were able to do the stuff that they were able to do was for almost all of recorded history, the internet was basically a guy on a horse. If you don't have the internet, it's amazing what you can do with all the free time.
Question from Daphne.
I'm curious, how did they tune these rings of stones? Or how do you think that they did them? That where they take several years to decide where a shadow's going to be on solstice, and then next year they would put stone up. I just wonder where they get the reference from to build these circles that told them what day it was.
That I didn't get.
Okay, so Daphne was asking how they decided where to place the stones. How did they take measurements over the years and then decide to put a stone up there? Or
Yeah, that seems to be the best guess. For example, at Stonehenge, to get the positions of the moon, it's an 18.6-year cycle of it going back and forth. So you're looking for when is it farthest away from the sun's rising, and there's a bit of slop in that, and the basic in terms they aren't perfectly lined up, and as one person said, the probably reason for it is that the weather back then probably wasn't any better in the British Isles than it is now, because you only got you've only got like 2 days to catch it when it's at the extreme, and if it's cloudy those 2 days, you got to wait another 18.5 years to have a second try at it. So a lot of it would have been done probably just by laying out stakes with ropes and measuring it that way. And then once you're sure you've got it where you want, then you bring the stones in and place them.
Judy?
Thanks, Pat. I noticed in a couple of pictures that you took of the first ones that you showed in your presentation that the stones had a sloped top to them. Was there an astronomical reason why they were sloped, or is it just ease of construction?
I think, well, that one of the things that you find about the types of rock that's used there is it breaks into slabs very easily. So I think it's one of those cases where you break one off the right thickness, and then you basically sort of chop it to more or less the right shape you want. I don't think the actual angle at the top really does anything, especially because they don't really know, given how much erosion's taken place, what angles they probably originally were at. When you look at those stones, they've been sitting up there for thousands of years, and the weather in Scotland is not noted for it's not like Egypt or someplace where well, actually Egypt's got sandstorms, so I suppose you're going to get some erosion from that. But between the temperature swings and the fact that you've got rain and wind and everything else, I suspect that a lot of those rocks are not the shapes they were when they were first put up. Stonehenge is a bit of an odd one in the sense that the stones there were actually shaped to some degree. They were actually pounded to chip them off to make them the shapes that they were. Whereas it seems like in Ireland and in Scotland, they basically just found rocks, split them to the right size, and then just brought them over and plunked them in. Because they're not very uniform. Even if you look at all of them from one to the next, I don't think there's any two at any of the sites that you can say, yeah, that one looks like it was done by the same guy or the same team of workers, because it's got the exact same shape. They're all one-offs. So I think it was more just the location of where they were sunk into the ground that was the key thing.
Judy was asking how deep they're buried.
I think most of them go down about 1 meter. So they're 1 meter down, 5 meters up.
And this...
I was going to say, if I was putting up a 5-meter fence post, I'd probably wanted to go about 1 meter down into the ground as well. So, and when you've got all those people walking around packing the dirt down, so that it's nice and tamped in place. But there was one of the sites where one of the, I think it was the Storms of Stoness, where the local landowner was tired of people cutting across his fields to get to this thing, and he actually started breaking some of the rocks and knocked one of the bigger ones over. So they put that one back up, but it's like a lot of things that once people don't know what they're there for anymore, it's just a handy source of stone for other projects.
Pat, were the standing stones on Orkney quarried locally, or did they have to bring them in from a distance?
No, they're all quite local. It's not like, again, Stonehenge is a bit of an oddball too, because some of the stones there, they know were brought from quite a distance. But the geology in Scotland is quite a bit different than the geology in fact, if you actually look at the Scottish-English border, the underlying rock changes right at that border. It's like night and day from a geological point of view. So the rocks in Scotland are, there's lots of places where it's just very easy to just, it's a type of rock that just splits into pieces without too much difficulty.
Any other questions? Dave Chapman.
Hey Pat, I went to Callanish in the 1980s, so I might be the only one in this group among other than you that's been there. So when the moon is at its major standstill in the summer, it barely rises above the horizon, right?
From up there?
Well, the rise point and the sun are so close together. So it strikes me that if you had built it any farther north, it wouldn't rise at all.
I'll have to check that. But I think part of the reason why not too many people make it over there as well is because even when we went, it turned out if you don't book the islands, the Outer Hebrides, and they're all connected by ferries. But it turned out we waited too late. We wanted to go onto the islands one way and come off the other. And it turned out we were able to get our rental car over, but not get it back off the island again. So what we ended up doing was the bed and breakfast we stayed at in Ullapool, I think it was, said, well, why don't you just leave your car here, go over on the ferry as a passenger, which is dirt cheap, and we rented a car when we got there.
In the 1980s, that wasn't a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think tourism in general has gone, in Europe, it's all over the place. I mean, the one thing about going down to Lewis is the Harris Tweed is made down there, and you drive through these really twisty mountains, and you find the factories where they actually make it, and they have just stacks and stacks of pants and jackets and hats. I got a hat where there's just you keep trying them on until you find one that fits, and then you hope it's the color you want. But yeah, we were lucky that we actually were able to get a rental car because we didn't actually get it confirmed that we had one until we were on the ferry on the way over.
Bob, any questions from the folks on Zoom? No.
Just a comment that it was amazing.
Okay. Did you get that, Pat?
Oh yeah, well thank you. It's always like I said, it's always fun putting together a talk, and I didn't actually finish it until about 11 o'clock last night. I tend to find doing presentations, if I put the stuff together just before I give it, it tends to stick in my mind a lot better than if I do the thing up 3 months in advance and then have to go back afterwards and go over everything. Yeah, what's in the next order and what notes have I got for this? So that worked out well.
All right, if there's no other questions in the room. Oh, we have one more.
I originally from China, and I found it's so shocked that maybe in the Stone Age, the British and the Chinese, they don't know each other. They cannot communicate each other, but they use same technology to create same things. So I want to know, do you believe that right now, maybe in the universe, there's still some creatures doing the same things like human beings, like the develop math, develop AI, they try to search the universe, try to find some other creatures, but just like British and the Chinese in the Stone Age, they don't know each other. They cannot communicate. Is that a possibility? Thank you.
Well, I think science is anybody who's been looking for life on other planets. The general assumption is that mathematics is the same for everybody. Science and the laws of physics are the same for everybody. So I think it's not surprising that every society that's developed a hammer they all looked the same. It was basically a heavy weight on the end of a stick that you threw and put at something. But if there is other intelligent life, I don't know if they develop AI. Maybe that AI may be one of the things that actually guarantees your civilization's not going to get much further. But I suspect that any other civilization that's sort of life as we know it, probably would start off with something fairly simple and gradually develop, or possibly stay at that level, depending on the resources available to them. It's kind of funny because one of the big differences between China and most of the and say Europe is that, with the exception of one emperor, I think, who actually sent a whole fleet of enormous ships on a trading expedition down into Indonesia and I got around as far as India, that China generally was a very inward-looking society. They weren't really into exploring, whereas in the case of Europeans, give them something that they didn't know what was on the other side of the mountain, and they'd go over the other side of the mountain and just keep on going. So so sometimes it may not be it may just be a cultural difference. So you may have a society that develops, but has absolutely no interest in communicating with other worlds. They may develop radio, but don't think of looking for radio signals or broadcasting radio signals out into space, thinking somebody else might pick them up. But yeah, it's always one of those really interesting questions: is there life out there? And if there is, what does it look like? We probably won't know for some time to come, though, if ever.
Okay, no other questions? Thanks so much, Pat. Please join me in thanking Pat.
You're welcome.
And we'll have a break until 2:45. Okay, so we'll begin again with Paul Heath doing Food for the Soul.
Does it have to be clipped or?
Yeah.
Hello. I'd like to thank Jason Dane for contributing the photo for this poem today. There's been basically three comets, Lemon and Swan and 3I Atlas, which is the comet from interstellar space. So and most of the pictures that I've seen of those comets are full of satellite images. So that's basically the premise of this poem, or the reason for this poem, that it's hard to see the comet with all the satellite tracks going through it. Broken swords. 3 swords from the deep darkness have come. 2 at their last passing, omens of hope and loss and change. The 3rd from deepest unbound darkness has arrived. Their light grew, and as they dropped into life's giving presence, from the mere points upon the darkness, a glowing swords upon the night. Eyes swung outward, lenses bent to capture their solidifying light, their growing brightness, a hope of passing wonder to fill the tapestry of night. But as their light solidified, a brilliant flash tore through the darkness, not the gentle flash of their cousins remembered passing, but a blazing flash slicing into the hope for wonder of the night. As lenses bent to capture details within the growing light, more frequent, more numerous, the blazing flashes tore into the darkness, hoped for wonder. Once omens of awe upon a deep darkened tapestry, now ripped images torn by the blinding flashes of greed's unbending knife. The sword's last passing, a quiet call of wonder upon night's darkened tapestry, now just the savage rendering of loud, frantic voices rushing across the night. The farthest store, its speeding, escaping from our sight, perhaps also fleeing, wonder's rending. The other 2 sweep out upon their circling paths, but will they return upon darkness's gentle tapestry? Or will their passing be lost Behind the wall, a frantic, blinding light that slashes and rips the darkening tapestry forever from our sight. Like the next time those two comets back, Lemon is 1,100 years and Swan is 2,800 years. When they come back around the next time, we won't see them because there'll be so many satellites up there. So, anyway, thank you.
Okay, now we have news from the board.
Oh, it's me.
Oh, thank you. So the first item I'd just like to draw your attention to is the Scope Fund. We are today at about 48% of our goal. So we received donations for Scope in terms of $4,785. And of course, to $4,785 to this point. And of course, that is matched by the generosity of Michelle and Tony Shelnick, so that actually amounts to $9,000, almost $9,600. So I'd encourage anybody who, we still have a couple of months to go. Anything that you can do to support the Scope Fund is your impact is doubled. Just to remind folks that the St. Croix Observing Night, we're allowed back in the woods, and so the Friday, the 21st of November, is the next observing night. The new moon's on the 20th, so it'll be a nice dark night, the 21st. Encourage anyone who can to attend. Even if you don't have a telescope or you don't have any, or if you're a new member or something, come out to St. Croix. It's a wonderful spot to spend an evening. You just bring yourself. There will be telescopes in action out there, so there'll be always something to observe. There'll be always someone to have a chat with, and we have a lovely little spot where you can even just sit down and spend some time watching the night sky. So you don't need anything. We're getting into the winter season, so remember, dress accordingly. It could be cool as the nights go by. So if you're like me, you don't have much hair on your head, make sure you bring a woolen cap. Keep your eye on the list to make sure that, because it's weather dependent, and if it's a clear night, we'll be in action, but just keep your eye on the list for information regarding that. The next one, Jerry, please.
You actually can, it's the downward one.
That time of year, there's the RASC has.
Down, the other button.
I should hold this upside down. Yeah, the RASC has a number of awards, and this is the time of year. The deadline for applications or recommend someone for an award is the 31st of December. If you check the national website, there's a link there which will take you to all the information associated. So if you know somebody in the center or in the RASC who you think is deserving of recognition, this is the time to do it. So again, the link for the information regarding the RASC awards are shown on the slide and available on the national website. Also, try to encourage folks to think about the RASC certificates. There's both observing certificates and astro-imaging certificates. The pursuit of a certificate is a wonderful way to help increase your knowledge both about observing and astrophotography. And it's also an opportunity to meet with some like-minded folks, because sometimes you can do these certificates together and form a little group of folks who maybe are working on it. And so that's a wonderful opportunity as well. And finally, just wanted to remind folks about the astrophotography contests. There's really the requirements to enter are you just be a member of the RASC or a resident of the province of Nova Scotia. There's different categories: the deep sky, solar system, wide field, and as well a people's choice. And last year, you can see there were some lovely images. These were the winners from last year. So if you're an astro imager, think about submitting to our astro imaging contest. I'll turn things over to Judy.
I have an Italian background, so I want to see if I can attach this so I can actually use my hands. Can you hear me okay on Zoom? Okay, lovely. All right. One thing I didn't mention when I was talking about the calendars earlier is that I really do like to bring forward acknowledgement to the Nova Scotia folk that are involved in various projects nationally and here locally too. But with respect to the calendar, I'd like to point out that Michael Gatto was involved in the graphics and production of that calendar. So we have a Nova Scotia connection there. Unfortunately, this year there aren't any Nova Scotian astroimagers in it, but they are still phenomenal. So please consider getting one. I'd like to thank Lisa Ann Fanning and John McPhee for another incredible issue of Nova Notes. This is the cover of the current version. It's now available on our online. Barry Burgess took that photo out at East River, and it's an incredible photo of the lupins with the Milky Way. If you are considering submitting an article of any variety to the next edition, be it a book review, an article of some relevance relating to some aspect of astronomy, please feel free to forward it to Lisa Ann and to John. And there's the email address, novanoteseditor@halifax.rasc.ca. And the deadline for submission is December 15th, so keep that in mind. But there's a lot of really cool things. Tony has written a really cool book review that I think you, on black holes, right? On black holes. So I think you'll find that intriguing. Down?
Down.
There we go. Okay, the handbook. Some of us have gotten it already. Yay! And some of you will be getting it soon. Because the postal strike is over, it is being sent by regular mail, so you will get it eventually. James Edgar is the editor for this one, and I think this might be his last one that he's editing. I could be wrong. No? I hope not. Has what? He has another 5-year sentence. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. Sorry, James. But anyways, you should be getting that soon. And I made a note here of, it has 352 pages of jam-packed stuff about every aspect of astronomy that you were afraid to ask about, but it's there. And in those pages are 63 contributors writing various articles. And remember a moment ago I said I'd like to acknowledge Nova Scotians? Well, of the 63 contributors, 11 of them are from Nova Scotia. And the 2 that are asterisked are new this year to the OH. Tiffany Field and myself are new contributors. Sorry? Yeah, got that right. But Paul, you're one of them too, so that's okay. No. But anyways, so there is a new crew there, so please have a boo at it. The month by month is certainly there, and that's the part that Tiffany contributed to, so I'm sure you'll find that interesting. Yeah, I think some of us can blame Dave Chapman for pulling us into the manual, but that's okay. We learned. Exciting stuff with respect to governance. The AGM is coming up on December the 6th. And the deadline, I mean, the nominations are in, but the nominations will be opened again at the AGM for the board. So far, these people have offered to have their names stand in those positions. But that's also to say that if any of you want to run for any one of those positions, because you're intrigued, say, by the secretary's position, for example, we'd be happy to hear from you. Also, we have 2 vacancies on the board for directors, and we really would like to hear from our membership. I'm hoping that the membership realizes that, yeah, there are 10 people there on the board, but we represent every one of you. We want to get you involved in the center. Being on the board is certainly one way of getting to know people and getting to know how we do things. It is recognized, and I keep telling people when I'm recruiting first-timers, that your first year on the board is really a learning experience. You get to know the process, the people that you'll be dealing with, not only on the board, but also in the center. And it's fun, believe it or not. And one thing that we really do want on the board is your opinion. You have experiences through your normal day-to-day life, your work experience, your volunteer experience that our board can benefit from. So if you feel that you can contribute to, we really would appreciate it if you come forward and join us, okay? Also, to keep you apprised, this is for the 2026 board. To keep you apprised that in 2027, Tony McGrath will not be able to reoffer his name as president because he will have filled his 3 years of the 3 years that our position descriptions allow. And I will no longer be able to run for secretary because I've been on the board for 10 years and I have to step down. So those are two key roles that in 2027, people can start thinking now about whether they'd like to do one of those two roles. Okay. Now, excuse me, we do have positions that have appointments. In other words, these are not elected by the membership, they are appointed by the board, and they are appointed by the newly elected board at their first meeting in January. At this point, we don't have any names for a communications chair or a nominating committee chair, although the president, Tony, is automatically on the nominating committee, but he's not necessarily the chair for it. So for now, these are people that have stepped up to be appointed come January. And you notice that by and large, there's a single individual as the chair of that particular group. Nova East is kind of a weird duck in that we had several people stepping forward saying, I'd like to be on that again. So we have a group of people that are willing to contribute to the Nova East planning. But although these single souls have offered to be chairs for these various groups, we would like to offer up to the membership that if you can contribute and assist these people in projects, or when we mention, for instance, when Dave Hoskin mentions an EPO, an education and public observing event that he's hosting, if you can assist him, that would be lovely. If you can assist Tony and Peter at some point with respect to the Dark Sky Preserve, that would be lovely. So even though these are the chairs throughout the year, if you would, or even before, if you would like to contribute to these groups, please let us know. Because again, we're counting on our membership to assist. We're only a group of 10. We can't do everything, be everything. Otherwise, we'd be quitting tomorrow. We need your help on this. Okay, so those are the names that are now standing. But again, it's open from now until the AGM. So this piece of the puzzle is quite open. So if you'd like to assist on any of these, please let us know in the interim.
Judy?
Yes.
I'll stand up and make a speech. Not everybody knows me. I'm a past president of the center, past president nationally. This stuff is not scary. It's fun. You crack jokes all the time. Don't be afraid of it. This is our center. This is your center. And you get out of it what you put into it. And if we don't have volunteers, the center will die. So we need volunteers. There are people that are burning out. I did my 40 years. I quit, sorry. I did it locally and nationally, and yeah, burnout is a big issue. So Judy's done an enormous amount. Jerry does an enormous amount. There's a few other people that do piles of work for everybody's benefit. So join the club. I mean, there might be brownies, who knows? And anybody who can bake, bring it. Because that's part of what makes it fun. It should be fun, it shouldn't be work, and it's not scary. So don't be afraid to say, sure, I can do that. If I can do it, you can do it.
6 months after you go on the board, they'll make you the president, and the other one has to leave for a better job.
That's not true. Okay, so I understand that that wasn't heard. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase, but basically what Mary Lou had said, that she has been involved as a volunteer, and she's not volunteering right now, for about 40 years as president here, president nationally, and various other roles as well in both levels, might add. But she said it's not scary, and that we are a center with lots of members, and we should have volunteers, because without volunteers, we won't exist. Did I get the salient points? Is there something else you? Sorry? Yes, and if you can bake, please bring brownies. But nonetheless, it is fun, and it's not scary. It really isn't. It's not rocket science, to be honest. It will take some of your time, but you can decide how much time you want to spend as a volunteer. That's totally up to you. And we do appreciate your time that you do take, or will take, for the center, but it is needed, so please consider. Did I capture that? Did I capture that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a bunch of chickens running around with their heads cut off, that's it.
Okay, down. So the next meeting of the Board of Directors is December 2nd. We always meet the Tuesday before the public meeting. Tony McGrath is our president, and if you want to contact any other member of the board, you just have to go to Contact Us on our website, and you'll find the email addresses to do so. If you have a concern to raise, or if you have a question about the center, or if there's something that you'd like to see us do that we're not doing now, please contact us. Okay? It's a two-way street. We're telling you what we do, but we want to know what you do and what we're not doing that you'd like us to do, if we can. The other piece of the puzzle is National Council meets on December 7th. Every center across the country, there are 30 centers, has 1 to 4 representatives, depending upon their population. It's 1 rep for every 200. We have 1 rep for our center, c'est moi. The purpose of the National Council is that it's the gathering of the clans, if you will, to try and figure out what it is that we have in common that we need to address. And also we act as an advisory to the board. For instance, the December 7th meeting is the proposed budget meeting. The presidents are being invited, so Tony will be attending that particular meeting with me to when the board presents the budget, so that we can then review it, question it, et cetera, before the board brings it forward, period, for approval. So it's a really interesting level of governance within the RASC, and it gives the centers their voice, okay? So if you have anything that you feel that I should be raising to the National Council, please contact me. Also, as I mentioned earlier, our AGM is on December the 6th, and we also have a very special speaker, the newest fellow of the RASC, Paul Gray, will be addressing STARMIS 2025. He attended that session, and if you weren't privy to his Facebook page, there's some really cool pictures there, both of the event, the landscape, the night skies, and I'm sure he'll address that at his presentation on December 6th. I asked Lisa's permission before I changed it, just so you know. I just didn't do it willy-nilly. But for those of you who've received emails from me, you know that I always close by saying, stay safe, stay curious, and starting at your feet, look up, the skies are open. I also want to remind people that even though we may be out in our backyards or observatory alone, you aren't. There are a lot of other members from the center and those across the country that are also underneath that same dark sky at various points of the night, obviously, across the country, but here in Nova Scotia, there are others with you out there in the dark, so you're not alone. So when you look up, think of the others that are also looking up with you. Thanks. I think that's it. No, I can't close it. I'll let you do that.
Okay, before what's up, I just wanted to mention a couple of outreach opportunities. On the 17th of November, rain date, I think the 19th, the Cobequid Young Naturalists of Canada are having a stargazing event at Glooscap Campground out to Parsborough Way. So I'm going to go up there. If anyone wants to join me, let me know. And on the 25th, I'm going to have a group of beaver scouts out at Harry DeWolf Park to do a bit of stargazing. So again, let me know if you're interested in coming out for that.
David?
Yes.
Can you put that out on the list, and that way people, if they're available, they can volunteer with you?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. All right. So what's up in the November sky? First off, we go back to standard time tomorrow morning, 2 a.m. And sunset is today is at 6:02. Sunrise, if anyone was up early, was at 7:52. So pretty long night, short day, and it's going to get shorter by the end of the month. So end of the month we'll have over 11 hours of darkness. So great for imagers if the weather cooperates, which it hasn't. The last we seem to have gone from phenomenal skies for a period of a few weeks to solid cloud. Other direction? No, it's just. Yes. Okay. The sun. Can we get rid of the stuff at the bottom, Jerry? Okay. So after a period of all kinds of sunspots on the surface of the sun, currently there's only 3, 2 pretty small ones and 1 modest-sized sunspot, soon to rotate out of view. And all of these are stable, so unlikely to produce any solar flares or CMEs. However, there is at least 1 very active sunspot on the backside of the sun, which is going to rotate into view the next few days. And it's the one, if anyone's been following space weather, there were some really impressive coronal mass ejections heading on the other side of the sun away from us. And that's the sunspot that was responsible for those. I think there was one that was the biggest one recorded in the last, what is it, Bob, the last 50 years or something? It was huge. So we may yet get some more northern lights. The moon, if you go out tonight and there's no cloud, which seems unlikely. Uh-oh. What's the HDMI? Oh, that looks promising. Here we are. Okay, so the moon's going to be near Saturn tonight. And you'll notice that we're in a waxing gibbous phase, so full moon. The animal fattening moon will be on the 5th. And then the last quarter is going to be the 12th. We'll have a new moon end of the month on November 20th, and that's the rivers freezing over moon. And then on the 28th will be first quarter of that moon. And the moon is near a number of planets and stars, but not super near, except for on the 17th, when the moon is near Spica. But there's still a few nice sights for people with binoculars to have a look at. And I'll illustrate them here. So on the 6th, the nearly full moon is going to be somewhat close to the Seven Sisters, and it almost fits into the field of view of 7 by 50 binoculars. So that's always a nice sight. And on the 9th, the Moon and Jupiter will be close enough to see in the field of view of 7 by 50 binoculars. And of course, you'll have the added bonus of seeing not just Jupiter, but the 4 Galilean moons as well. And hiding in here, which may be hard to see with all that moonlight, there's a small open star cluster called the Twinkling Comet Cluster. On the 13th, this is when the moon is close to a bright star in the constellation Leo, and that's Regulus up here, and the waning gibbous moon. This is a challenge because Leo rises well after midnight, about an hour before dawn, so you have to get up early at 4:30 if you want to see this. If you do get up and you have a telescope handy, have a look at Regulus, because you can just see it's a double star. And on 17th, this is the closest approach of the moon to a celestial target of interest, and that's the very thin waning crescent moon and Spica in Virgo, quite close together in the field of view of 15 by 70 binoculars. Again, you need to be an early riser, so 5:30. Not quite as bad as Regulus, but you still have to get up before dawn. Explore the moon. As always, the best time to look at the lunar targets for this observing program is around the time of the first quarter, which will be November 26th to the 30th. That'll allow you to see a lot of objects in nice relief and contrast around the terminator. The planets this month. It's a bit of an unusual month in that at this point all the planets will be visible at sometime in the month, but some of them are going to be hard to see because they'll be very low to the horizon. So Mercury is currently quite low in the southwest after sunset, and at mid-month it'll disappear and then return in the morning sky in the last week of November. There are a couple conjunctions coming up, which again are going to be a bit of a challenge, but there's a conjunction between Mercury and Mars on the 12th, and one between Mercury and Venus on the 25th, and that's probably the easier one to see. Venus, if you are an early riser, you'll have noticed it. It's in the late morning twilight until the 4th week of November, and at that point it's going to disappear into the solar glare. Mars is really low in the southwest, still visible if you have a good horizon until the 3rd week of the month. Jupiter is well placed to look at. It rises before midnight now, and if you're interested in looking for Galilean moon's shadow transits, there are a couple double transits coming up on the 5th and the 20th of the month, and if you want more details, check out the Observer's Handbook or boot up Stellarium and have a look at when those transits take place. Saturn is also well placed. It rises in the east just after sunset and is now visible for most of the night. And as I said, it's near the waxing gibbous moon on the 1st and the 29th. Uranus will be visible in Taurus after sunset, and it will achieve opposition on the 21st. So at that point, Uranus is going to be at its closest to the Earth. So a good time to try to image this small blue disk. And Neptune is visible in Pisces during the evening hours. So if you haven't seen any of all of the planets, this is a good month to try to do that. Okay, so here's the Mars-Mercury conjunction on the 12th, and you can see how low these are to the horizon. Okay, so that's at 5:15. So you need a really good southwest horizon. And in 15 by 70 binoculars, that's what it will look like. Here's the Venus-Mercury conjunction on the 25th. You don't have to get up super early. It's 6:50. You could see this conjunction, but again, it's a challenge because the two planets are going to be they'll be in Libra, but they're so close to the horizon, to the southeast. You know, if you live on the south shore looking out over the ocean, that would give you a good horizon to see those planets come close together, and that's what they look like in 15 by 70 binoculars. Now this one's cool because you have all month. Uranus is close to the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades, for all of November. So if you haven't seen Uranus in binoculars, this is a good time to have a look because it's easy to find the Seven Sisters. And once you do, just look down in your field of view and you'll find Uranus. Okay, so really easy to find it this month. Okay, explore the universe. So we're into the autumn constellations, Pegasus, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Perseus, and Aries. And you'll see these constellations looking to the east. And of course, you'll see Saturn at that time. Autumn stars, a couple notable ones, Myrfak and Algol are stars of interest. Algol, of course, is the demon star, and there'll be more on that later. It's good to know these stars because if you have a Skywatcher go-to telescope, these stars are used for scan alignment. So you need to know which star you're slewing to do your 2 or 3 star alignment. The Explore the Universe deep sky object for this month is Messier 31, the Andromeda Galaxy. So it's really well placed to identify just above and to the right of the double cluster. And of course, if you see Andromeda, then and you have a reasonably dark skies and you have a telescope, you'll be able to pick out the satellite galaxies Messier 32 and Messier 110. And the double star for Explore the Universe in November is Beta 1 and Beta 2 Capricorni. This is a binocular double star, so easy to split these stars. It's actually a grouping of 5 stars. And Beta 1 Capricorni is an orange giant down here, and Beta 2 is a white giant. So that's an easy double star to tick off for the Explore the Universe program. We also have a couple meteor showers, actually 3 meteor showers this month. We have the southern and northern Taurids on November 5th and 12th. Now, of course, November 5th is going to be close to a full moon, so lots of moonlight. That's going to be a hard one to see very many meteors, only the brightest. But on the 12th, there won't be so much moonlight, and should be able to catch a few. It's not the most prolific of meteor showers, for each one about 5 per hour, but they are sometimes very bright and slow moving. And then we have the Leonids. The Leonids will be on November 17th, so the moon is going to be not too much of a problem. These are fast-moving meteors, up to 15 an hour, unless we are so lucky as to have a meteor storm. And this is a wood cutting of the Leonid meteor storm in 1833 over Niagara Falls. They clocked 100,000 per hour. So that must have been pretty amazing to see. These meteors are the result of the Earth passing through the debris left behind by comet P55 Tempel-Tuttle. And it's due back in 2031. And lastly, I didn't change the dates. I think this is it should be the 8th and November 8th and November 9th. But in one night, you can check the Observer's Handbook, because that's where I got this from. But in one night, you'll be able to see the Algol at its minimum, and then a few hours later at its maximum. And that's it for what's up in the November sky. So any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you for the AGM on December 6th, followed by the members meeting. And Judy's pointing at the book tables to say the books are still going to be out until 4:30, so you have a whole hour to have a look and part with some of your dollars. Change that slide, Jerry.
Please hang up and try again.